Hello guys, welcome back to this challenge. I missed 2 or 3 days uploading this because I had exams. So I'm back. Let's do this again. Rule number 3: quit social media. In In 2013, author and digital market consultant Belinda Trustholm launched an experiment. He decided to disconnect from his online life for 25 days. No Facebook, no Twitter, no Foursquare, a service that awarded him Mayor of the Year in 2011. Not even email. He needed the break. Thorstone, who is described by friends as the most connected man in the world, had, by his own count, participated in more than 59,000 email conversations, posted 1,500 times on his Facebook wall in the year leading up to the experiment. 1,500, that's crazy. I was burned out, fried, done, toast. He explained. We know the Thurston experiment because he wrote about it in the cover article for Fast Company magazine. Ironically, titled Unplug, has Thurston reveals in the article it didn't take long to adjust to a disconnected life. By the end of the first week, the quiet rhythm of my days seemed far less strange. He said, I was less stressed about not knowing new things. I felt that I still exist despite not having shared documentary evidence of shared existence on the internet. Thurston struck up the conversation with strangers. He enjoyed food without Instagramming the experiences. He bought a bike. Turns out it's easier to ride the thing when you are not trying to simultaneously check your Twitter. The end came too soon. Thurston laminated, but he had startups to run and books to market. So after 25 days passed, he reluctantly reactivated his social presence. Thurston's experiment neatly summarizes the important points about our current cultural relationship with social networks like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and infotainment sites like Business Insider and the BuzzFeed. Two categories of this online distraction that I will collectively call network tools in the page ahead. The first point is that we increasingly recognize that these tools fragment our time and reduce our ability to concentrate. This reality no longer generates much debates. We all feel it. This is the real problem for many people, but the problem is especially dire if you are attempting to improve your ability to work deeply. In the preceding rule, for example, I described several strategies to improve you sharpen your focus. These efforts will significantly more difficult if you simultaneously behave like a pre-experiment Bernard Thurston, allowing your life outside, such as training to remain a distracted blur of the apps and browser tabs. Willpower is limited, and therefore, the more entity tools you have pulling at your attention, the harder it will be to maintain focus on something important. To master the art of deep work, therefore, you must take back control of your time and attention from the many diversion that attempt to steal them. Before we fight back against these distractions, however, fight we must better understand the battlefield. This brings us to the second most important, summarized by the Thurston study, the importance with which knowledge workers currently discuss this problem of network tools and attention. Overwhelmed by these tools demands on his time, Thurston felt that this was his only option was to temporarily quit internet together. This idea was a drastic internet subtactical is only alternative to the distraction generated by the social media. Infotainment has increasingly pervaded our cultural conversation. The problem with the binary response to this issue is that these two choices are much too crude to be useful. The notion that you would quit this internet is, of course, an overstuffed straw man, infeasible for the most, unless you are a journalist writing a piece about destruction. No one is meant to actually follow Brené Thompson's lead, and this reality proves justification for remaining with the only offered alternative. Accepting our current distracted state and is inevitable. For all the insight and clarity that Thurston gained during his internet substatical, for example, it didn't take him long once the experiment ended to side back into the fragmented state where he began one day on the one day first I first started writing this chapter, which fell only 6 months after the Thornton article appeared in the Fast Company. The reinforced connector had already set in dozens tweets in the few hours since he woke up. This rule attempts to break us out of this rut by proposing the third option, accepting that these tools are not inherently evil, that some of them might be quite vital to your success and happiness, but at the same time also accepting that the threshold for allowing a site regular access your time and attention, not to mention personal data, should be much more stringent, and more that the most people should therefore be using many fewer such tools. I won't ask you, in other words, to quit internet altogether like Brenner Thurston did for 25 days back in 2013, but I will ask you to reject the state of distracted hyperconnectedness that drove him to the drastic experiment in the first place. There is a middle ground, and if you are interested in developing the deep work habit, you must fight to get there. Let me see how much time I got. Yep, at 8. Our first step towards finding this middle ground in network tool selection is to understand the current defaults decision processes deployed by the most internet users. In fall of 2013, I received an insight into this process because of an article I wrote explaining why I never joined Facebook. Though the piece was meant to be explanatory and not executory, it neverthelessly put many readers on the defensive, leading them to reply with justification of their uses of the service. Here are some examples of their justification. Entertainment was my first initial draw to Facebook. I can see what my friends are up to and post funny photos and make quick comments. When I first joined it, I didn't know why, but by my mere curiosity, I joined a forum of short fiction story. Once I was there, I improved my writing and made my good friends. I use Facebook because a lot of people I knew in high school are on there. Here's what strikes me about these responses here, which are representative of the large amount of feedback I received on this topic. They are surprisingly minor. I don't doubt, for example, that the first commenter from this list finds some entertainment in the Facebook, but I would also assume that this person wasn't suffering from severe defect of entertainment option before or he or she signed up for the service. I would further wager that this user would succeed in starving off the boredom even if the service were sudden shut down. suddenly shut down. Facebook at the best added one more, arguably quite mediocre entertainment option to many that already existed. Another commentator cited and making friends in the writing forum. I don't doubt the existence of these friends, but we can assume that these friendships are lightweighted, and given that they are based on the sending short messages, I guess it's over. Thank you for watching. That's about it. Bye.